Lost Cinema 2020 by Brian Gothong is an Esplanade Commission presented as part of the Studios Online. My name is Edith Podesta, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this behind-the-scenes conversation with creator-director Brian Gothong, writer Kayleen Tan, and producer James Jordan Tay, who are here to talk about the inspiration and inception of Lost Cinema 2020. Brian, I thought I would start with you first. I was reading up on the Italian film director and screenwriter Fellini, who said that talking about dreams is like talking about movies, since the cinema uses the language of dreams. Years can pass in a second and you can hop from one place to another. It's the language made of image. And in the real cinema, every object and every light means something, as in a dream. So, Brian, can you talk about the connection of dreaming to the title Lost Cinema 2020 and where your fascination with dreaming, film and storytelling arose?
Okay, so maybe I'll talk about where my fascination came from. I mean, all these years, people always ask me where my ideas come from, when I'm creating art. So it's always come from my dreams, I mean, besides watching films and reading books and all that, a lot of my ideas actually come from my dreams, whether it's, I keep this dream diary and I wake up every morning and I write in it, or whether it's daydreaming, I'm always in this kind of state of reverie where I'm just going on some kind of thought. Yeah, so the nature of dreams has always fascinated me. And I've always tried to see how it links with the nature of consciousness as well. Then, of course, I read all these theories about films and dreaming, how they're interlinked. And of course, I have this theory that it's not my theory, but it's like kind of cobbled together from different people, that dreaming and filmmaking are very similar processes. The fact that we dream, we're actually like a filmmaker or a film director. We're all Fellinis in a way, because how in the day we have so much stimuli, from our sense perception, we look at things, we see things, we hear things, but we don't really process it. And then when we go to sleep, our subconscious kind of becomes the director and starts taking up all these and starts constructing a dream. And then, of course, when we wake up in the morning, this film is lost. That's why this title came out, this Lost Cinema. Yeah, so that's maybe, how I came up with the title, I guess. Yeah.
And so that's been, a part of your life from what age, this connection between dreaming and storytelling?
Yeah, I've always been a dreamer since young, so I don't know exactly when, but and I thought it was normal that people remembered their dreams clearly. It was only later that I realized, oh, my sister doesn't remember all her dreams, that kind of thing. And then I realized, oh, this may be some kind of special ability to remember dreams. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. I like this idea that we are all directors, of our dreams, and it's quite sad when we think about it being a lost cinema. How many hours of dreaming have we lost? But I'm so grateful to you for putting these dreams on stage, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the online performance. I'd like to now talk to Kayleen. I was reading in this encyclopedia of sleep and dreams that 95% of what we dream could be classed as authentic dreams, that they reflect actual memories and, they follow the laws of physics. But we have another kind of subset of dreams, which is illusionary dreams. And the illusionary dreams are containing things that are impossible, incongruent, maybe bizarre. So when I was reading the program notes, you write that Brian gave you the license to dream, inspired by the film heritage of 1950s Malayan and Singaporean cinema, without the pressures of historical reproduction. So I wanted to ask you what percentage of your written fragments and speculations are illusionary, and how much of your writing, how much of the authentic remains in your writing?
Okay, so I should say that the writing emerged as a result of a lot of conversations with Brian. So he's kind of fed me with lots of little nuggets and images and ideas already. So even before I started writing, that was all already planted, you see. And then the process involved a lot of reading and research and watching films. So there were all these things kind of floating around, and I guess they were sort of infiltrating my consciousness and my dreams. And so I think it would be hard to give you a percentage. um, but I mean, in terms of the authenticity of it, I would say that, you know, it's not based on personal experience, but you know, I think the emotions and certain essences like love, pain, loss, the act of creation, you know, that comes from me, I guess, you know, and the kinds of characters I like to create. Yeah. Then in terms of speculations, I think it's entirely speculative, based on facts and research. So, you know, there were oral archives and interviews and all that. So, you know, I try not to dwell too much into the archives. I read them or listened to them once or twice, you know. I tried to do it just once. And so it was just like something that was there, that sort of planted in my head, right? But I wasn't going to dive too deeply into it or analyze it. So, you know, so those things were also planted there. And then I think I try not to go back to them. And so that's where it became speculative and a bit more fun. Yeah, and then, you know, see what lands when I start to write.
And do you remember any of your dreams when you were writing this, you know, particular script, when you were looking at the archives and mining them? Did you find that they turned up in your dreams?
In my actual dreams, I don't think so. I don't think so. No. Yeah.
And
But
in your
yeah, sorry, but a lot of the time, whenever I wake up, I mean, and if I'm working on a project, it's always something that I wake up with. So, you know, so these are images that come to me in the morning rather than at night when I was asleep.
And did you find, when you were looking through the archives, did you find anything in the factual research that was perhaps a bit stranger than fiction?
I think there were lots of things that were stranger than fiction. Brian pointed me to Lok Wan To's field diaries. Quite a lot of the one of the characters is based on Lok Wan To. And I mean, his field diaries where he talks about photographing birds was just surreal. It was really amazing, and he's a very good writer. And he talks about how he had to skin a flamingo. And I think that you know, he talks about it really vividly, and so that really stuck, and that's why there are flamingos in the show.
Yeah, there's a flamingo dance, isn't there? Quite early in the piece.
Yeah. So, you know, and also I guess maybe this is where the personal comes in as well. I mean, I hate birds. So it's like a way of dealing with birds for me, stuffing them.
Taxidermy. Thank you. Brian, on page 2 of the script, there's this quite haunting reference made to the cafe in Dobigort during World War II. You know, it was used as an air raid shelter. For some pilots, it was also used as a landmark because it was the tallest building at one point in Singapore. But also it was overtaken by the Japanese. I wanted to, when looking at that, talking about fiction and fact, can you talk about the influence that the character L and the history of Singapore's golden age of Singapore has had on your theatre making and career, not just this particular show?
when I was doing research for the golden age of cinema in Singapore, I mean, there's basically two factions. There's the Shaw Brothers and the Cafe films. So, of course, there's no the only museum I could find was the one in Cafe building. Actually, they have a really small cafe museum on the second floor, and it's free. So I just walk in there, and then of course I kind of discovered Lok Wan To's life there. You know, like how he built up the whole cinema, and there were like his books, his cameras, and everything. And I was just quite the golden age of Singapore cinema is actually not very new to me in my career or in my craft, but I realized how interlinked it is, especially knowing how Singapore was creating works in the 50s and 60s already. You know, they were really cosmopolitan, like in the sense that they were like the Malays were the actors, the producers were the Chinese, the directors were Indian or Filipino, and this sense of the lost world that's gone from our from our world now was just so fascinating to me. So I kind of I was just seduced by that. And I realized as well that because I work with the film house, I work with Eric Koo, basically, his company, and he's also he's very linked to the cinema of Singapore, right? He's the new wave of cinema in Singapore. And he's the one who actually educated me in a lot of these golden age of cinema. And in fact, we recreated a small film, a small Pontianak film for Seven Letters in that omnibus film, and we recreated this this whole golden age, and we use real old stars who are aging, their cameos and all that, and that's how I got to know this lost world basically, and I thought it was just important to explore, especially in the last few years since 2015, where we celebrated our our 50 years and then bicentennial. We've been doing a lot of this like salvaging of history or reimagining our history, and but I mean, Kaylin was very specific in not being nostalgic, which I agree with her, because I'm not very nostalgic as well. But I thought there was a lot of material to be discovered in this searching, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. And this, you worked with James as a producer for this collaboration, Brian, and it's not the first time you've worked with James. So I wanted to ask James if he can talk about how working with Brian might be, as a producer, might be a unique experience. James, can you talk about that?
Okay. In the span of producing, I think I'm a very young producer, in a sense that I've not produced a lot of work. Mainly my work in producing has always been with Brian. And also, I think it was a very open conversation that we always have, with regards to whether, how producers deal with all sorts of scenarios, from budgets to human resource, to who to select. It has always been a very open conversation. And he has always been very supportive in the sense that, towards certain choices we have to make, certain strategies you will have to put together, to deal with whatever that's happening. And of course, and I think especially for this run of this version of Lost Cinema, it has been extremely strategic in many ways, in dealing with whatever that's happening from a day-to-day basis, to how to then, move the production towards what it is now. Of course, with Esplanade support, that, we come together as a team. So in that sense, it has always been, for me, always a very unique experience working with him. I think this is our fourth or fifth project together. So that's how, well, that's how I see it. And every experience has always been very unique, from getting a car in to to planning how do we set up certain things for rehearsals and all that.
Yeah, getting a car in for the film sequence as well as the motorized car on, oh, maybe that's a spoiler alert, I'm not sure. But I mean, there are some phenomenal sequences in this production. I wanted to ask about, not only the sets, but Kayleen and Brian, I wanted to ask about the music, the soundtrack of the piece. And I was thinking, is it a soundtrack or is it a musical? Like, how do you utilize the musical interludes to, enhance, or do you use them to bookend or deepen the storyline? Kayleen or Brian, I'll leave it up to you who answers.
Maybe Kayleen, you can start first because you chose most of the songs.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, I'm not sure if it's a soundtrack or a musical. I think that the songs kind of exist as part of that world where the performers, exist in. So it's like part of the dream logic of their world, where it makes sense for them to just drift into dance suddenly, and song is also part of that world. That there is no sort of there is no division. So it's not even an interlude; it's just an extension of their worlds. I mean, that's how I kind of imagine the two songs that I put in, which was the Terkenang Kesuma by Maria Manado, and then later on Fascination. And what I liked about those two songs was that it's the same tune, but it's completely different lyrics, and I put them at points where the characters at different points of the two characters' relationship, sort of at the beginning and at a turning point later. So you hear the same song, but it's done in a different style, but with completely different lyrics. So there's the kind of, I guess it's quite surreal kind of dream logic about that kind of thing. Yeah. So that was it. Yeah, that was just my input, but Brian chose the other song.
I chose that song, "Keep Young and Beautiful," because I remember you were in the early phases. You were talking about writing a scene about aging and something like that. So, and then I was also like looking for music because I needed one more transition to get to another scene, and I was just like listening to a lot of different music, and this suddenly popped up on my YouTube stream, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I remember there was a scene that Kayleen wanted to write about, aging and all that. And then like, oh, maybe you can bring that back in, in a funny interlude, the surreal interlude. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was fun.
It is fun. I mean, yeah, I have luckily seen the piece and it's beautiful. These musical interludes really do feel, for me, a tying in of the dream, a constant friend or companion during the piece. Brian, I know that you, this is the second iteration of Lost Cinema. In 2018, you presented the first iteration in a gallery as a 6-channel video installation. Yeah. Have you found an answer to the question you posed for that installation, which was, how does our perception of film change when live performances by actors are introduced? Have you, working on Lost Cinema 2020, been able to answer that question?
I'm not sure if I found the answer, but I mean, to give you a bit of a context, when I created that piece with Institute of Contemporary Art, that question was really posed to me by the curators, Bala Star and Katerina Riva. And because I just posed to them this installation, this 6-channel installation, but they wanted to, they challenged me to take it further and add live performance in it, to create something different. And I thought it was an interesting challenge. And basically, the language of film and theater is kind of different. But I was also, so there were these 3 layers of dreaming and filmmaking, and now there was theater. And I kind of, and I've been doing theater, so it's not like something that's totally different from what I do, but I was trying to find a third link, and I guess whatever the thing I found was maybe this idea of theater is more maybe like lucid dreaming, because you're always kind of conscious of the physical body of the presence as well. But you do go into a kind of state of like, when you watch a film where you're totally lost in the film as well. So yeah, that was the third state I found, lucid dreaming, which I do encounter once in a while as well. When you wake up in your dream and you realize you're dreaming and you can somehow control it so you can fly in your dream or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a lovely way of looking at it. I've never thought about that. Lucid dreaming. Theatre is lucid dreaming, maybe a dream that we all dream together in the theatre. Kayleen, you in the program notes said that you wanted to invite the audience to participate in Lost Cinema 2020 as a lover, a complicit lover, perhaps. You write, how do you respond to the signs of flirting? You are at the cinema, you feel your date's arm at the back of your seat. Do you recline towards it? Can you talk about the audience's participation in the characters on stage, what seems to me to be a bit of a love triangle?
How is it a love triangle?
For me, it seemed like, maybe in my dream, it seemed like a love triangle.
Okay. Well, I think when I wrote that, it was like the show was a flirtatious gesture, because it wasn't, it wasn't like a historical account of what had happened, but rather, it's something that we were sort of very playful with, and it's quite suggestive and sexy and all that. So, and I think it's open as well, because it doesn't try too hard to be historical. It's more inspired by history. So it's open in that way. And so that is the invitation for the audience to lean in and to be immersed in that dream world, and to flirt back or to dream back if they want to. Yeah, so it's an invitation to, fall in and, not to be so uptight about dates and what really happened, but to be open to suggestion.
I was open to your suggestion. I was also, very flirtatious with Lost Cinema 2020. So much so that I thought it was a love triangle, but maybe not. Maybe I wasn't participating.
Oh, no, that's your dream.
That's my dream. Yes, exactly. One of the things that I was really taken by was the locations of the multimedia. Brian, can you share why you chose those locations to shoot, and also how the interior shots were constructed? Perhaps you or James can talk about that.
Oh, okay. Maybe I can talk about some of the choices. I mean, basically, I was researching one film by Hanif Hussain, which was Cinta Kasih Sayang, and basically in that film, it's like a love no, not a love triangle, but a wife cheating on the husband kind of story. And it was filmed all around in the east side of Singapore, in the east coast, Tanjong Katong and Mountbatten. You could see all the very familiar sites, even outside Goodman Art Center, And so I was looking for locations that were kind of like that. But in the end, I chose a bit strange, more strange locations, like under the underpass of East Coast Parkway in Fort Road area. And I just wanted not to be so literal in that sense. Yeah, and kind of reimagine what that movie will be like if I filmed it now. Yeah. And also we also went to Malacca to film in an old crumbling cinema. I mean, the idea was to actually film my actors in a cinema in Singapore, and I was like looking at old cinemas like that didn't look like a megaplex. So there was only the Capitol, which was still too shiny and new for me. So I had to I had to rack my brain and see where I could film it. So in the end, I found through Google a cinema that happened to be called Capitol as well in Malacca. And it was actually owned by the Cafe Cinema, but it's totally abandoned. It's like a car park now, and the roof has like fallen through, and there's no roof, and the stage is still there, and the balcony is still there, and I thought it was perfect. I mean, I couldn't bus all my actors up, so I just bus Yu Bing up, and then we kind of filmed that scene there, and it was quite lovely. But most of the film we did was actually filmed in the annex. We created this a series of 6 sets that was based on our workshops and based on the research. And when we were reading like Kayling's script, we were like reimagining stuff, and we were like we traced the life of Maria Menado, and we just made it up, in our heads. And then we wanted to create a dream, but I challenged the actors to like, let's not just create one dream, let's create 3 dreams, and then we kind of mix everyone's characters up, and then we just filmed this giant film that ended up as a sequence in Lost Cinema 2020. Yeah.
James, would you like to add to that at all?
I think Brian has pretty much said, towards the gist of it. But I think the filming was always been one of the highlights of the project. Because every time we go in, I think the production team will always like, what are we doing? What are we doing? But until they see the product, of the wonderful editing, and then they were like, oh, I see, after it's all been put up, but it's always so exciting to see, okay, what we're going to do next, So, I think that was one of the highlights for the team, to put the production aspect of it together.
Yeah, I think when you talk about, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? That's how I felt watching the production. It was amazing. There was always surprises, and the sets are characters in and of themselves. I mean, they're so beautiful. I wanted to, start to wind up, and I wanted to ask all 3 of you your opinions. I was reading this academic paper by a Canadian philosopher and poet who wrote a paper titled Vision and Dream in the Cinema. And in this paper, he talks about the experience of watching cinema as floating between perception and observation. He said that in dreams, we are participants, but when we watch cinema, we move in this dreamlike state between being a participant and an observer. And something that struck a chord in me is he said, when we watch cinema, it's like being involved in the participation, but without contact. And that reminded me of what we're going through now, this participation without contact during, circuit breaker and lockdown and COVID-19, because participation without contact has become our norm. You all know the piece intimately. You all created the piece. I'm interested to know what you think we might gain from watching Lost Cinema 2020 online that we might have missed watching it live. And not only can we watch it twice online, but are there certain things that you think the camera might pick up when we're watching it online that we might have missed as an audience member within a theatre?
Okay, I have to admit, when I first saw the first cut of the online version, I was really disappointed. I was very sad. I was like, oh no, I so many things are missing, and things that work well on stage didn't translate well on screen. Like, things like actors walking on set. I had to cut that out, things like, because if I put it in, it'll just seem really boring, and like, what are we waiting for, So there were things that I felt were like, oh no, they're all gonna disappear. But after editing it a few times around with my editor, who's very brilliant, he came up with he made it come alive again. He did certain cuts, and he put certain shots together, and he did close-ups that I didn't think of doing close-ups, because in theater you can see everything all the time, whereas in film you are directed to see certain parts. And I thought he captured a certain kind of spirit. And of course, the close-ups, you can never do a proper close-up in theater, like to really go into the eyes of the actor. So there's something that came up from the online version, which I thought was a different kind of intimacy, which I really liked as well. Yeah.
Kayleen, James, do you have any opinions?
I have to say that my experience of Lost Cinema has been entirely virtual, being based in Melbourne. So, apart from that first time where we sat down with the actors for a read, I think that was the first and last time that we were all together in the same room. So, it's been a fascinating process to just watch the rehearsals, which Brian and the team uploaded. It's really interesting to watch all that from a distance and feel like, oh my gosh, I just want to be in the same room, but you can't. But having said that and being disappointed that it was not performed this time round, seeing the cut of that particular cut of Lost Cinema has been really great. And like Brian said, those, to be able to go close up to certain actors at certain points, I think that has sort of brought the cinema aspect to the theatre, which I think, which is really nice. Yeah, I think it's sort of between theatre and cinema in a way that many straight recordings of theatre productions are not.
Yeah, I agree. It's so beautiful. James, do you have anything to say, being the producer of this event?
Okay, I think in terms, if you talk about dream, because this is a so central theme, for me, there's actually two ways we can dream. Either you are a participant or you're an observer, right? I've been told, although most of my dreams are always I'm in it, but I've been told by some of my friends, actually no, sometimes when they dream, they just see, they just see things happening, and that's how they dream. So I think it's a choice that the viewer can have, right? Whether do you want to be an active participant within the dream itself, or do you just want to see it the way it is? Even though sometimes we can be in a theater, right? But you can watch it as though as you're not participating. It's really a question of mindset and the framing of the viewers. Is really a choice that you can have. So I think this product, if I may call it a product or an artwork, is very unique because the viewers have a choice. Whereas even in the theater, you can have that choice, but it is put really in front of you. So if you think a little bit deeper when you're watching or after watching it, you can choose to be a participant, even though you're not there physically. Of course, we look forward to the day that perhaps in the future to come, that this work can be staged again, and so then it will be that we can in that sense be participatory within the realm of theatre when you're in the theatre space. Yeah,
that would be great to see it live again. That would be phenomenal.
Yes.
Is there anything that you would like all three of you to speak about anything else about the inspiration and inception of Lost Cinema 2020?
So I'm just glad that Lost Cinema is coming online, because there was one point where we really thought like Lost Cinema was going to die a silent death and it was not going to open, and me and James were really worried, and we didn't want to tell the actors that that basically the whole performance was going to be cancelled. But of course things opened up after a while, and we had this digital platform now, and we're just quite happy that people will get to see it.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of poignancy about watching the recording of it as well, in that in some ways it is a lost play about lost cinema. So I think there's a kind of poetic quality about that. Yeah. So yeah, just hoping to see it live. I think that would make a huge difference.
Yes. I mean, for me, I know we're talking about the loss of lost cinema, but also there is so much to be gained, because I think that, it's a phenomenal production. And yes, I think it would be different watching it live, which I hope we do get the opportunity, to watch it in the presence of the actors, not just in my bedroom online or at my desk online. But I'm so grateful to the studios for allowing all of us to have this opportunity to view such a fine work of art. Thank you so much for taking the time, Brian, Kayleen, and James, to talk about your inspiration and the inception of Lost Cinema 2020. I'd like to close by borrowing a line from page 2 of the script that really rang out prophetically for me, which is, even in the grimmest of times, we need entertainment. And I think that's very true, perhaps now more than ever. Thank you so much.